Nam yo ho renge kyo, 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 nam yo renge kyo, nam yo ho 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 renge kyo. Nam yo ho renge kyo, 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 nam yo ho renge kyo. Nam yo ho renge kyo, nam yo ho renge kyo. Nam yo ho renge kyo, nam yo ho renge kyo, nam yo ho renge kyo.
And our guest today is Ketna Shankar, who is a product marketer and Buddhist practitioner in the Nichiren Buddhism in the Soka Gakkai International.
What is the name, the high level philosophy, and just the nature of this spiritual community that you're a part of?
I'm a part of a community called Soka Gakkai International, or SGI, and this is a global community-based network of over 11 million members across the world. It really spans almost 200 countries, and this group is essentially committed to dialogue based on the conviction that individual happiness and the realization of peace are linked. And it's really rooted in this faith of Nichiren Buddhism.
What was your process of encountering this community and joining it?
At this point, it was around 8 years ago, 2014. I was in my senior year of undergrad over at NYU. And earlier that summer, my grandmother had passed away really suddenly, just like really traumatic experience. And I think over time, my experiences, living far away in New York, which is on the, other side of the country from where I grew up, and kind of, realizing that my self-confidence was really at an all-time low. And it was almost like this moment where I felt like I'd been building my life for so many years in New York, and it wasn't exactly the life that I really wanted. Kind of with that, I actually, one day was walking around and I ran into a former co-student, shall I say, one of my friends, who was on the board of a club with me at NYU. And I remember she was in a hurry to go to a Buddhist meeting. And, I'd actually known about this because growing up, my mom had actually been a part of SGI, and I had kind of grown up seeing her chant over the years, and she had wanted me to kind of, always join, and I was never really interested. And during this kind of part of my life, I remember my mom would be on the phone with me and she would try to always encourage me to go to a Buddhist meeting in New York, and I wasn't really into it. But then when I ran into my friend and she said she was going to a Buddhist meeting, I just, I asked her, I was like, wait, do you chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo? Which, I'm happy to explain how that's kind of a part of Nichiren Buddhism and SGI. And finally, one Sunday, after, many tears and encouragement from my mom, I decided to reach out to this friend and learn more about it. And I'll never forget, sitting on her bed that one day, just crying to her, saying that I really want to learn to be happy from within, gain happiness for myself and not rely on anyone else externally for that. And I remember she responded, hey, this practice is totally for you.
Where that framework came from for you, or what made you ready for that in that moment when you actually identified that for yourself?
I think a lot of it came from deriving my self-worth and my value based off of what others kind of thought or others perceived of me. And I think that kind of the second kind of component to that was happiness in that moment kind of felt very fleeting, to your point, Rahul. And so I think for me, I really wanted to reach a point of this sustainable happiness where, the happiness kind of that I seek is almost absolute, where it's living itself is joy.
About the relationship with your mom and how that connection helped you move in this direction.
It's one of those things where it's growing up, you see her chanting every day in the morning, and really just committing herself to this practice. And then, of course, I feel like at that age, you're like 16 years old, a teenager, your mom tells you to do something and it makes you want to do the opposite direction, go run in the opposite direction. I think at that point, it was like my life was really seeking. And on top of that, I truly, believe that my mom's kind of prayer led me to that friend at NYU and that specific moment where she was going to a Buddhism meeting. And I really do feel like it was my mom's prayer that led me there to just, be in the right place at the right time. And I think a lot of that, really came from my mom chanting for my happiness too.
Did you consider any other spiritual practices or spiritual communities, I should say, in that early phase, when you were kind of reconnecting with this part of yourself, or maybe connecting for the first time and exploring this particular option? Did you look at other places, or was it just kind of like, no, this felt right, from the get-go because of everything that you've already described?
I was in a very seeking spirit at that point in my life. So I was, kind of looking for that outlet that would help me find faith and be able to self-develop, go through self-development. Some of the other practices that I had kind of taken a look at, a lot of their meditation practices it was very much focused around kind of like clearing your mind and really just being present. For me, with chanting, when I experimented with it, it felt more like an active form of meditation where I was able to still think about my goals and how I wanted to feel, but with like a very focused determination. And so I think that was one thing that kind of drew me to chanting and Nichiren Buddhism, was just my experimentation with it and how I felt during it.
How did you get committed? Was it a really active choice, or was it natural? Has there been ebbs and flows to your commitment? And what's that process been like that's allowed you to stay deeply connected to this community over all these years?
Faith or whatever it is. And so, I definitely have felt that. And I think for me, kind of looking back, I feel that my practice has become more profound as the years have gone by and as I have kind of dug deeper into my practice. I think initially, of course, like I was just experimenting with chanting to see if it worked, to see if, changes in my environment were happening. As I started to, get older and as my challenges have started to become, a lot more serious, I think I've found that I've really leveraged the practice to really just change, a lot of my inherent negative tendencies and really sort of try to transform them into more like positive tendencies.